We all have access to the same intelligence, the same strategy, the same technology, the same data. So what separates the organizations that deliver from the ones that don't? It's not the plan. It was never the plan. 7 in 10 organizations will fail the biggest transformation since electricity. Not because the strategy is wrong, because strategy doesn't execute itself. Trust doesn't build itself. Creativity doesn't spark itself. Data doesn't decide. People do. The organizations that win this moment will be the ones who invest in their people to make the difference. Because the answer was never in the strategy or the tech. It was always in the room. FranklinCovey. We give strategy the human edge.
Once again, good morning and welcome to the FranklinCovey Nigeria webinar, Clarity Under Pressure, How Leaders Stay Focused, Effective, and Resilient in Uncertain Times. I'm glad that you can join us. From our registration, I know there are people joining us from Lagos, from Abuja, Port Harcourt, even England. And so if I haven't mentioned your location, please feel free to type it in chat. Would love to know where you're joining us from. Great. My name is Egwana Owie. I'm the marketing lead and client partner at FranklinCovey Nigeria, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. We'll go through a little bit about what we do at FranklinCovey Nigeria, then take a deeper dive into why we're here, and then get into the crux of the session today. I'm sure you're looking forward to it, as I am too. Then we'll share a little bit of what FranklinCovey offers, in case you may be interested in latching onto some of those. Take feedback, ask enough questions, and then we'll wrap up. So take a very good seat, put on your seatbelts, and get ready to go on this journey with us. At FranklinCovey, our mission is to enable greatness in people and organizations everywhere. We're your leadership and organizational performance partner because we bring impact, and we bring impact at scale. So you can say we give strategy the human edge. And we have done this for over 40 years, enabling greatness in people and organizations, investing a lot in research and in our solutions so they can continue to serve our clients. We serve and continue to serve in 160 countries and have developed over 30 million leaders. Yes, 30 million leaders. How do we do this? How do we drive performance? 3 things, or 3 pillars, if you will: leader capability, a high trust culture, and execution excellence. We create impact using our proprietary thought leadership, expert delivery from our world-class facilitators who are both global and local, our tech-enabled experience using our impact platform, and we provide strategic advisory and help you to succeed. This we have done and continue to do. In Nigeria, FranklinCovey is about 30 years. And so we have continued and will remain committed. We remain committed to supporting organizations. Let's jump in. Yes. Our speaker today is Ifweko M. Omoigwe Okaro. She's a distinguished strategist, corporate leader, and governance expert with over 4 decades of experience helping organizations lead through complexity, transformation, and change. As founder of Ristro Limited, she built one of Nigeria's leading leadership and strategy consulting firms from the ground up over the last 30 years, and now serves as Group CEO of Compliance Professionals PLC, the CPP Group, which as part of its operations oversees the FranklinCovey license in Nigeria. She also made history as the first female executive chairman of the Nigeria Revenue Service, NRS, where she led one of Nigeria's most significant tax reform programs, delivering transformational results under intense national scrutiny. Today, she serves on the boards of leading organizations, including MTN Nigeria and PZ Cussons Nigeria, providing strategic oversight in an increasingly volatile business environment. A first-class graduate of accounting from University of Lagos, as well as the Imperial College London and Harvard Kennedy School. Ifweko brings a rare combination of boardroom insight, transformational leadership, and proven resilience. She's a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICAN, a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Taxation, CITN, and a fellow of Compliance Institute of Nigeria, CIN. Her experience across strategy consulting, public sector reform, and corporate governance gives her a unique perspective on how leaders can stay focused, make sound decisions, and lead with clarity under pressure. Please join me and make welcome our facilitator and speaker for today, Ifweko Omoegui Okaro, MFR.
Thank you very much, Egwano. And I'd like to join Egwano to welcome everyone to this webinar. I hope you can see me very clearly.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So let me first share my screen. And I notice we have 42 participants online. So we'll proceed. And as people come in, we may not be able to recap, but I'll try my best to do that. So this is the flyer I believe you all got when you accepted to be here. I just want to talk about a few things in the flyer before we actually commence, so that I manage your expectations. First of all, there's a caveat to this statement here, which says, do you know most leaders are carrying more than they were built to carry alone? I agree with that completely. And the ones who manage it well aren't just tougher, they think and operate differently. The caveat is on the manage it well, because I believe it's a continuous process of trying to manage. And as we discuss in the next 60 minutes, I'm going to talk about also how I have tried to manage it well. It's something I'm continuously trying to do. And I do hope that you'll also share with me how you are trying to manage it well as well. My presumption is that by you coming in today, you're going to be sharing experiences, and hopefully both of us and all of us will leave this session a lot better prepared for the uncertain times than we're coming in. That's my expectation. It also says FranklinCovey Nigeria is hosting a complimentary 90 minutes. Yes, it is complimentary, but it's not exactly altruistic in the sense that we are also talking about what we do at FranklinCovey, which is part of the larger CPP group that I lead. And for FranklinCovey, I am the country partner in Nigeria. And for those of you who know me, I hear these comments all the time. How do you do all the things you do? Because I do get to do quite a lot of things. I have quite a number of roles. And so this topic actually speaks to me on how I can be clear, under enormous pressure. But even then, it's also talking to how I continue to strive to stay focused, effective, and resilient, in the uncertain times. And a lot of what I do, to be quite honest, is driven by what I've learned as a license owner to FranklinCovey right back from 1994. And it remains true. And therefore, sharing it for me, it's really about sharing that knowledge, and hopefully it will also help you as well. The Flyer Act also presents me as the former executive chairman of the Nigerian Revenue Service. And I tell people that it's really not just, how will I put it? My reputation as the Nigerian Revenue Service is a great one, and I appreciate that. But there are certain things I also like to emphasize as well, because before the Nigerian Revenue Service, there was another part of what I do, which is very relevant to this. But I actually take the work we do in Nigerian Revenue Service on what we call the FRS at the time, in a way as a testimony to how these solutions actually helped me through that process. So beyond what is in the flyer, which Egono has also, I think, bridged that gap, is the fact that I'm also the founder of Ristral, which was founded in 1996. And the partnership we had with Covey Leadership Center, as it was known at the time, started at exactly the same time we started Ristral. Because the L in Ristral, which stands for leadership, Ristral is research, strategy, and leadership, was meant to help the organizations we strategize for to truly build leadership systems, institutions that lead, and people that lead within those organizations. And so the solutions preceded NRS or preceded FRS. And FRS actually gave me the opportunity to test those solutions and actually show that it's really, really, those are proven solutions beyond my beliefs in it. So I'm a living testimony of FranklinCovey principles and solutions in all I do, not just in what I do officially, but also what I do at a personal level. And again, I hope this session will help in communicating the outcome of my constant reflecting and thinking about how to, all the time, elevate impact at organizational and individual levels in the different roles that I play. So what are the critical messages I want to pass on today? But before I do that, I just want to also again manage your expectations. It's not a tell session. I want it also to be a discovery session. I want to discover new things from you. And I hope you'll also discover new things from me. Because one thing FranklinCovey teaches is that we're all different and we all have different experiences. I can't tell you how to do what to do, but I can share the principles that guide what we do. And those principles came through my discovery working with FranklinCovey. So I do hope that as we pass on these 3 critical messages throughout this session, you will think through how best it works for you and your organization. There are 3 things I like to emphasize. One is ground yourself. I know Nigeria, we have this mantra of change begins with you, but the truth is, it is true, change begins with you. It is very true. And it begins with each and every one of us, whether you're at home, whether you're in an organization, and I believe I'm talking also to chief executives, HR leaders, who will find this solution very useful in growing impact within their organizations. It always starts with the individual. One of the principles, or let me say paradigms that of leadership that FranklinCovey talks about are the 4 levels of leadership. And if you think about it in concentric circles, the 4 levels of leadership starts at the heart of it with self-leadership, and then team leadership, and then organizational leadership managerial leadership before you get to organizational leadership. So it starts with us. Then focusing your team. Again, because this is for chief executives, no chief executive, no one. And when we say chief executive, it could be of a for-profit, it could be a not-for-profit. It could be a home, because that's an organization setting in itself. But no chief executive or deputy chief executive or HR leader can work alone. None. None. Even in life, the truth is we can't work alone. And so there's a need to be conscious beyond ourselves of how we focus the team towards achieving that end goal that we want to achieve. And the last but not the least is, and once we've learned these processes, how do we sustain it? How do we entrench it? How do we ensure it is grounded? The enablers that I believe in this session I'm going to talk about, and I'm using the word enablers very deliberately, because imagine these messages, if I go back, no, let me not go back, but if you remember the three messages, ground yourself, focus your team, and sustain. Think about that as the front end. Okay, think about that as like the website you're looking at. But behind the website, there's so many things running. Okay, behind what you see in front as the things you need to do, there are certain things running, almost like an engine behind to make it work. For me, these are at the minimum 5 things, and there are more. I mean, again, there's only so much time I have to discuss this. But what are the values? What are your values? And distinct from values are your principles, because again, what COVID teaches you is that you need to be principle-centered. There's a difference between being principle-centered and being values-driven. Okay, they're different. So if, for example, I'm thinking about this session, for example, and all the different roles I have, if I really, really value my integrity, and if I really value that, if I've given a commitment, that commitment needs to be done, regardless of the number of roles that I have to play. I need to ensure that in whatever I do, I represent those values. Now, that is different from being principle-centered. Principle-centered is recognizing all your different roles and helping you determine how to ensure that every time you're operating, you are recognizing all those roles. And what COVID teaches through the 7 habits is if you put principles at your center, it really helps you juggle. And as you do that in alignment with your values. The second point is, remember in the 3 messages, there's yourself, ground yourself. There's also focus your team. There's only so much you can focus a team that isn't the right team. We need to also be very practical about that. So recruiting the right team is fundamental in an organization. Ensuring the right team members fit what they are doing. They themselves are energized. They themselves aligned with where the organization is going. If those things don't work, no matter what you do as an individual to drive the process, it really wouldn't, in my experience, it doesn't pan out. So recruiting the right team is also very important. And in a way, I put 2 things in one. There's the support system that you need to have for yourself, okay, which is also very important because leadership is tough. Leadership is very tough. And as you aspire to higher and higher leaders, what makes it even tougher is that the stakeholders you have to manage. Okay, and so the more the complexity of the stakeholders, the diversity of the stakeholders, the more complex it is. And the more you need to put a hat on this principle-centeredness. In fact, it makes it even absolutely necessary. Because as those roles diversify and as you need to manage more stakeholders, principles have to be at your center so that you're not moving. The way you do things at home is not different from the way you do things in the organization. It's not the way you do things in your community. It's not the way, because otherwise, what you're doing inadvertently is you're adding to your pressure. Remember, we're discussing clarity under pressure. So you want to minimize the additional pressure that is self-made and that is self-driven. So these enablers, beyond what I'm going to be talking about, help that process. And you need a support structure around you. Support structure in the age of AI could be your AI tools because it helps you manage a lot of things better. Using the AI properly. A support structure could be, particularly if you're a woman, how you manage your home. Okay, because there are certain demands of your home. If you don't have that support structure in place and your home is not tidied up, and when I say home, you don't have to be married, or if you're married, or if you are a widow, it doesn't really matter. It's what support fits that need at that particular point in time. If, for example, you are living with elderly parents, for example, you can't be settled if you don't have a support system that will ensure that at least that part of it meets your needs. So that support is so important as a leader. Very, very important. The third set of enablers are beliefs and faith, and I've put them separately. Faith is what your faith, what you believe in, whether you are you are a Muslim, whether you're a Catholic, whether you're an Anglican, whether you're an atheist, whatever it is, it's important. What drives you? What makes you? What incentivizes you? What grounds you? Faith is really important. But more than faith, because sometimes we mix up the religion we profess and our beliefs. Sometimes we actually create confusion in the two, because we may truly be Christians, for example, but our beliefs are rooted in the supernatural. And even if the Bible doesn't say so, they don't look, the Bible has not gotten to that point. This is true. And your beliefs are very, very instrumental in driving who you are. And it's important that as I say all these enablers, the more they align, the less the pressure on you. The more they don't align, the more the pressure on you. All right? So the more who you are, who you want to be, who you would like to be, who people think you are, the more it aligns, the less the pressure. And so that's really, again, a very important enabler that we shouldn't take for granted. Another enabler is patience. Interestingly, my name means patience. And who knows, they say there's beauty in the African name. And, only God knows how names are derived. But you end up being your name somehow. I think that's my belief. May not be yours. But I've learned patience. And patience not as a tool, patience not as an act, patience as an enabler. If you are not patient, it affects a lot of things that you do. You need to look at it as a critical success factor. Patient, because the other thing I've also realized over time is that don't fret over a delay. Don't fret over a delay. Delays sometimes enable that patience, enable you that to reflect. So always see a reason for why there's a delay. Think through that and ask yourself, how does that reinforce what I'm supposed to do? Okay, so patience is a very important thing. And I found through time is the more patient we are, maybe it may be just 2 minutes. Patience doesn't mean 8 years. It may mean 8 years, but it may just mean 2 minutes. And just that 2 minutes makes a difference in whether you're putting yourself under enormous pressure or not. It's patience in listening. It's patience in doing. It's patience in expecting. Patience is really, really a very vital enabler. And last but not the least is a mindset to be prepared for any eventuality. That's a huge enabler if you have that mindset. Because what that does, it gives you agility. I now see a lot of materials now talking about agility. The truth of the matter, it has been on the table for so long. Part of my preparation was being a girl guide, okay, when I was a kid. And being prepared for those who are girl guides will tell you that, hey, they prepare you for life. So these are enablers that I believe will kind of add up as we finish. So I've made an assumption about the audience. One is that you're here because you want to be clear under pressure, but it's not really about managing pressure. Sometimes we can't manage it, and that's probably a topic for another day. But how, in spite of the pressure, you want to remain clear. 2 is how, as leaders, and so again, the assumption is this is for leaders, leading yourself, leading your organizations, stay focused, effective, and resilient in uncertain times. And last but not the least, not a direct statement in the literature that you read, but it's an inferred statement that for you to want to remain clear, you're asking yourself, how can I remain sane? Sometimes you just say, look, am I getting insane? Things are moving so fast. So you're here because you want to remain sane. And I'm using that in a very friendly language, sane, together, not, stressed out and true to who you are, not having to compromise, and it's tough. It's tough in certain environments, but how do you stay true to who you are? And so that's my assumption of why we are here. So before I proceed, I'm going to start the engagement with you because I want this to be a really engaging event. And so I'm going to move on to Menti. I don't know whether you've all used Mentimeter. It's a very useful tool for engaging, with the audience. And if you can, please scan this code or go to menti.com. All right. And if I can put this also on the chat if you can't scan. So I'm putting it on the chat. So you can actually chat, click on that link as well. So I want us to participate in these questions. So I will use your feedback, okay, to respond to the issues I want to take so that we're discovering, we're understanding each other, we know why you are here. I'm not making an assumption. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we learn, from this. And the way this is set up is for the first 50 that sign up. And so please note that, after 50, please just observe what we're going to be discussing. So the first question is, what words best describe what uncertain times are? Remember, this is about being focused, effective, and resilient in uncertain times. What does that mean for you?
Difficult times.
Sorry?
Difficult times.
Yeah, just type it in.
Okay.
Type it into the scan this or link. It will give you insight to answering this question. And there are several questions, but just follow my guide, please, and just write it in there. Thank you. Because this will also automatically analyze it to know the audience and what your own understanding is, and then we can talk through it. Thank you. So far, so good. I'll give you a few more minutes and then we'll analyze this in the interest of time. And if you joined while I was talking, welcome to this session. Please sign up on menti.com or scan this code or click the link that's put on the chat. So a few more minutes, and then before I go, I'll now discuss this. Okay, so please continue to fill in. There's quite a lot of coming in, but let me just summarize what has come up from, and you can continue writing while I summarize. So there's 6 buckets. Okay, so we have what uncertain times are for some is unpredictability. I think that's the most response. There's also change and volatility. Then there's ambiguity. Okay, maybe you're given an instruction, you're not clear what it is all about. Then there's lack of control. There's emotional distress. And then there are some that come under volatile, unstable, that'll be categorized later. So basically 5 groups, even as you write. Now, if you really think about this, doesn't this amount to life? Is life predictable? No, and you can please feel free to engage on the chat so that you can, is life predictable? Life is not predictable. So even though we're looking at uncertain times in the context of, there's maybe today Trump says they have a pact with Iran, then tomorrow the Iran war, and then there's oil price, and then there's fuel price, and then there's this. Uncertain times didn't come with the rise in fuel prices. No, uncertain times is life. Do we know what tomorrow is? No, we don't. And so when I was talking about one of the enablers is for you to have a mindset of being prepared at any time T. That mindset helps you when fuel prices increase because you're ready. It helps you when FX prices crash. You're ready. It helps you when all of a sudden your entire department has migrated to Canada. As I know in some institutions, that's what happens. You are ready. Okay, so hopefully what we're going to be discussing isn't something that is tied to any particular event, but rather what happens to us in life. And the fact that we need to therefore build in what we are discussing, not as a one-off process or way of doing things, but as ingrained in our culture and something that we plan to sustain, not just for ourselves, but for the entire organization that we operate in on a continuing basis. So let's go to the next question. Okay, I see some of us have already started going ahead. All right, so what are your expectations for this session? Hi. Hello. That's an expectation. Okay, so can we have more of this here? Yeah, so thank you very much. Again, let me group this and see what we have so far. Please continue to fill it in and we'll get more responses later. I can always come back to that. So 4 critical expectations, and we'll bear that in mind. 1 is personal growth, 2 is clarity, 3 is actionable strategies, and 4 is how to manage crisis through competent communication. And again, remember what we call crisis is also situational and is also tied to you as an individual. For some people, crisis may not be what they call crisis, may not be what you call crisis. Okay, so please let's recognize that this is all personal to you. And we hope that at the end of this session, we'll achieve that. So please feel free to ask any questions. I may not be quick on the chat to see what's going on, but Egwana is going to be helping. She's an anchor working with me to read out any, maybe stop me, read out any things on the chat that you need to address if I'm not addressing it. So Egwana, please, I'm relying on your eyes, please. Thank you. So let's go to the next question. And this is a deliberate question. And you'll see that the word is feel. Describe how you feel as a leader. Maya Angelou has always said that, people never remember what you tell them. They don't remember what you do, but they remember how you make you feel. So we want to also impact how you feel by the time this session is over. We want to be able to know what you are feeling now and hopefully help you feel better by the time this is, over. So let us know how you feel. As distinct from just the words you mentioned before, tell us your innermost thoughts and your innermost state of mind, so that way we're addressing that because we really, really want you to take this as a most valuable session and see how you can build on that. Thank you. Okay, again, please continue. I'm just going to group the responses again. I remember that you can keep writing and updating, that's fine. So I have 6 groups. One is confusion, really confused. Another is stress. Another is hopefulness. So you have hope, but you're curious. Another is challenged. Another is responsibility. And then the other new responses that we'll group in later. Let me help you here. So let me go back to this. Let me help you here. These are not unusual feelings. I've felt this way in different situations. Sometimes I'm confused, completely confused. I thought this is what was said, or wait a minute, this isn't what I was told, or how did I get here? Or I'm supposed to be prepared, but I'm not really that prepared. Okay, so you're not alone. Stress, I'm the madam of stress. Some people say I'm the one stressing others, but believe me, I feel stressed. Okay, so, but I do know that there are 2 types of stress. There's a stress that actually keeps you going and keeps you motivated, and there's a stress that is not good for your health. I try to manage the stress that is not good for my health by avoiding those things that would be not good for my health. So that's really an avoidance. But the one that is stressed, you are stressed because you put yourself in that shoes, you know this is what you want to do, and you are stressed. Hopefully this session will help. But if you are stressed for the things that you don't want to do, please, the real answer to that, which is another session, please don't do it. Please don't do it. Okay, that will manage that other stress. Because when you are not aligned yourself, what you want to do, how you are doing it, and so on, it is the most negative thing you could give yourself, and it ultimately affects your health. Our session today is about that stress that is self-inflicted, but you know you want to do it, you are hopeful about it, but it's giving you stress. You still want to manage all those roles. Let's see how we're going to work together to minimize that stress. To still be there a little bit, but to be there to motivate you, but not there to dampen your health or make you really feel depressed. That's not what this is about. Hopefulness, hopefully, will improve your hopefulness, and we'll see how you can actually take advantage of the hope. Challenging, a challenge is good when you see it as a challenge, but a challenge is stressful when you cannot address the challenge. So hopefully, even though you see it as a challenge, we hope we'll give you some tools to help you address that challenge so that you can really feel good about it, that you are challenged and you actually achieve results. And a responsibility, a huge one. Again, how do you make those responsibilities happen? So I hope this session will help make you feel more aligned and feel better about how you feel. So the next question is, define what being focused, effective, and resilient means to you. Which is the end goal? Okay, the title is Clarity Under Pressure. How to be focused, effective, and resilient. What does that mean to you? Consistency, I like that. Emotional well-being, fantastic. Leadership qualities, achievement. So thanks for sharing. And we're going to come back here and to ask you, did we achieve this? Did we achieve this? And to help understand the difficulties and challenges you face in remaining focused so that we can address those, so that the outcome is you can now be consistent. What are your challenges? What is stopping you from being focused or being effective? What are the difficulties you are facing? Please share. You know why I'm smiling? I saw some note here saying, by the way, this is such a good opportunity to self-reflect. Believe me, if you need tools on reflection, come to me. I'm a master at reflection. I think that's why 7 Habits was so good. 7 Habits, habit 7 is sharpen the saw. So reflect in the toilet, reflect on the bed. In fact, this morning I was wondering, and reflecting has to be part of you as a habit. I was wondering, how do I do certain things on this presentation? And in the process of it, I just knew, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. You know, there are some things that I don't even know I'm going to do until I'm actually doing it. And that's because I'm constantly reflecting at every moment in time, you know, but that's sometimes, let me say that's sometimes a negative for some people because they say, madam, you're moving the goalpost, you're moving the goalpost. I'm saying, no, it's not the goalpost, it's just me. It's not about you. You know, I'm trying to understand something better, you know, and some people could argue that reflection is about perfectionism. No, it's not. Much as I try to say that, it's not about being perfect. It's just about being more aligned. If you look at it that way, then perhaps you understand it better. And in focusing your team who are working with people who reflect, you need to constantly communicate so that they themselves need to reflect. We need them to also reflect, but communicate when they're reflecting so that you understand what this is all about. Okay, so let's group the responses. And we now have 4 or 5 groups. Okay, the challenges, distractions, believe me, habit 1. Habit 2. And habit 3, sorry. Habit 3, the time matrix. We're going to talk about that. Time pressure, how do we manage that? Anxiety, how do we manage that? Support system. Now, let me talk about support systems. And I do hope that some of us who had the wrong support system, like I said, this is a joint thing. Please, this group may not talk about a support system at a personal level other than tools to enable you to do that, but it's also talking about sharing as a support system. So please, if you had a wrong support system and you found a solution to, please share it on the chat. Please share it on the chat. Anything here that you feel you've surmounted as a difficulty, please share it on the chat. I want all of us to be involved in this and for us to take something out of this. Again, a question here. What are your expectations of me? What is it? Okay, so let me tell you a practical thing that just happened. I'm in a room, I'm taking care of my nephew who is just with me in the room, and I need to stay focused on this, and he was standing next to me, and I had to put the video off, talk to him, and then continue with this. It happens to all of us all the time, all right? Okay, so what are we here on expectations as facilitator? Personal stories. I just gave you one. Yesterday, I think it was my husband calling, and he calls in the middle of meetings. I needed to pause and address that. You know, these things happen. Practical advice, effective communication, skill development. Again, like I said, we're going to revisit this. Please keep, writing. But let's now move on to addressing the things that, we are here for. And I'm not going to ask you to write this now. So we're going to do that after this session. So let me now move on to the session itself. Now, we've answered this in the sessions we have. It's not a discovery and it's not a tell session. Let me talk about some of the FranklinCovey insights that I'm going to speak to. I'm not going to necessarily speak to all, but a few tidbits on how certain things have helped me in being clear, under pressure. And as I do that, let me just toggle to this and go to the difficulties or challenges that we have. Let me talk to this in staying focused, effective, or resilient. So let me come back here. So one of the tools that we have, and this issue, by the way, of time pressure, distractions, anxiety, a lot of it is going to be on the grounding yourself. Okay? How do you ground yourself? And I remember I've talked about principle-centeredness and the 7 habits. The 7 habits is a proven model or tool, however you use it. And in FranklinCovey, we've moved beyond just having a book, moved beyond just having a workshop. We now have what we call the All Access Pass, which is for subscription on an annual basis for an entire organization. And it gives you access to all the tools that FranklinCovey has. And it also, you can do self-learning on that platform. You can have a facilitator assist you. You can drop your learning journeys, and it recognizes that to ground yourself, which is one of the tenets of what FranklinCovey does, it doesn't happen overnight. So anything I'm going to say is something that you have to practice over and over again. You may need to have an accountability partner, and you need to even be an accountability partner to yourself. All right, and let me talk about the circle of influence and how that helps in managing distractions. Okay, no, maybe before I do that, one of the paradigms of the 7 habits is what is called the maturity continuum. Let me talk about this. And the maturity continuum basically assumes and talks about the fact that we start up being dependent as babies, human beings. But ultimately, the goal, when you say you're mature, is to be interdependent, not independent. We make that mistake, but to be interdependent, because that's a paradigm of growth, and that's a paradigm of success. And when I say paradigm, again, if you go through the 7 habits, I'll just paraphrase it. It's how you see things. It's the lens through which you see things. And if this is the lens through which you think, a lot of things will make sense. Because if you don't start off by recognizing that you don't want to be dependent, and the truly being effective is about growing in this maturity continuum, right? If you don't have this paradigm, it will affect whether you learn it or not. Now, from my personal story, for example, before I go to the personal stories, this paradigm breaks down the continuum into 2. And basically what Stephen Covey says is that you must achieve private victory first before you achieve public victory. And public victory is not just about working in the public service, which is what I did. No. Public victory is about working outside of yourself, working with somebody else, working with another person, working with a team, working with your board, working with stakeholders, public, outside of you. But for you to be successful working with others, you must have private victory. And becoming independent by being proactive, purposeful, and focused. All right, I'll talk about some tools in terms of managing distractions on habit 3. It's just a tool I'm going to talk about. But let me just talk a little bit about this, because the private victory is really what we're discussing when we're saying we want to be focused, we want to be effective, and want to be resilient. It's about achieving private victory. All right? And before the habits are the paradigms, are the principles. And like I said, you must be principle-centered. I won't dwell too much on that. But what private victory says is mastering habit 1, habit 2, and habit 3. And habit 1 is not how we know habit 1 to be. Because, and I like you to put it on the word. When you hear the word proactive, what do you think it means? Please put it on the chat. When you hear the word proactive, what do you think it means? Let me just go to the chat and see what you have there. Proactive. There's nobody on the chat. Yeah, to see and think ahead. Take initiative, think ahead. Okay. That's not the proactive we're discussing here. All right. So that's the English word for proactive. But the tool that we're discussing is, and believe me, I think this habit is where it breaks down. Because if we don't master this habit, it's difficult to move on. They're all interconnected. They're all interconnected. So habit 1 is thinking about 2 things, the way this is described: the stimulus and the response. And saying to your mind that there's a gap between stimulus and response. So when somebody is annoyed at you, or somebody is shouting, or something is, you don't just respond. You are keeping hold of yourself. All right, let me see. I think there's a tool here. Yeah. So a lot of us are reactive, if not all of us. The human mind is naturally responsive, reactive. We need to think about the stimulus and the response, and that there's a gap in between. And how you manage that gap is what, when you've mastered being proactive, you pause. And by the way, we made it be discussing seconds, minutes, not days. Okay? Not days. Seconds, minutes. But it's a state of mind. Don't react to the stimulus. And it's not telling you what you do in that space, but you have to be deliberate and intentional in that space, in what you say, in what you do, in how you do it. Don't just do things. Manage that space. All right? So for example, let me talk about the stimulus and response. And some of it, by the way, you could have anticipated the stimulus and thought about it, but it may not work out. Talking about uncertain time, may not work out. So let me use a typical example. I have my nephew who is here. There's nobody else with him. So he's here bonding with me. He's sleeping. And yesterday, he slept till 2 p.m. So I'm like, oh no, he's not going to wake up. And here he is. And normally it doesn't bother me. So it's not an issue. So I was working, and sometimes we can say we're closing the door, so we can't close the door on an 8-year-old. So he comes standing and is refusing to move. So I had to think, okay, how do I respond in such a way that I manage my audience and manage him? Okay, and you may not get it right the first time. You may not get it right the second time. Again, it's not about perfection, but it's about understanding that there's that space and the freedom to choose your response. In that freedom to choose lies the movement from dependence to being independent. If you feel you do not have a choice, then you are still dependent on whatever. So you should feel independent to have the freedom to choose your response. So let's go to the circle of concern. This is a paradigm that will help with distractions. And this is such a powerful tool. Now think of life, or think about the decisions we make and the actions we take as either falling in within a circle of influence, what we can influence, or a circle of concern, what concerns us. All right? And in that context, if you stay within your circle of influence, you are being proactive. If you stay within the circle of concern, you will be reactive. So being proactive is not just about the stimulus and the response and what you do in between and the freedom to choose. Even in that freedom to choose, you should stay within the circle of influence. So that, and what that does, it gradually eases out the circle of concern. So let me give you a practical example. I remember in FRS, and I've mentioned this story, I think, at some interview or the other. When I first started, everybody was saying, oh, today you see the data is not correct. The next day, the tax grants category is fraudulent. Another day, there was nothing that was just not right. And you get stories that this person is still in here, there's leakage here, there's leakage here, that is there. Those are circle of concern issues. I had to reframe what I wanted to do in FRS to what can I do about this situation? Okay, now we're going to talk about habit 2 because they all work together. Habit 1, habit 2, habit 3. Once you have convinced yourself or you believe and you understand that being in the circle of influence is a lot more powerful in being effective, because circle of concern, you can't do anything. You don't do anything. You're just there talking. In fact, a lot of things we do on social media, chatting, how this person is this, how this person is that, is such a reactive state. And the more we dwell on it, and the more we dwell on it, and the more we dwell on it, and don't cautiously move ourselves out of that. And talk about what are we doing about it. So if you think about the Nigerian state, a lot of us are in the circle of concern. Legitimately so. But does that move Nigeria forward? No. In our organizations, this MD is not this person is not this, or you are the MD, why is my board like this? Why is my board like that? You're in the circle of concern. Does that move the needle? No, it doesn't. Move yourself from the circle of concern to saying, what can I influence? If the particular policy is not right, what can I do to change the policy? That is being proactive. All right? So yes, it does fall into not waiting to be told what to do, but it's a bit more than that. It's recognizing that you must be in the influencing circle, not staying in the concern circle. And what happens, and you should try that, is that gradually the circle of influence it may start very tiny. You start building your influence. And with your influence, just imagine that it's touching on some concerns that somebody has. So you, by your initiative, and by staying on what you can do, you are gradually reducing the concerns and even the pressure on you that could have affected your being on the circle of influence. Another thing, let me just talk about this, is that the more you stay on your circle of concern, the more you are reducing your influence, because all people remember you for is the problems, the concerns, the issues, abusing somebody, but nobody, they don't know you for anything. So anytime they think about you, there's like, if you want to understand the concern, go to that person. But if you want to get something done, go to this other person. Yes, Egono, you're raising your hand.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so just a quick check-in. I know that it's almost the top of the hour. Just to let you all know that we're carrying on till, the half past the hour. So please, would love that you stay on as we continue the conversation. To you, ma'am.
Thank you, Egono. All right, so let me quickly move on. So let's go to the other habit, begin with the end in mind. What does this tell us? This is a tool that helps a lot, and that's the see, do, get paradigm. This is a paradigm within the habit. What does see do get mean? Again, I think I may have used this in other sessions, still on FI, but I don't have to only use FIRS. Let me even use Ristral. All right, let me use Ristral. Ristral, founded in 1996. We're in 2026, so it'll be 30 years, August 1. And when I started Ristral, what was the end in mind? The end in mind was to have a leading indigenous consulting company. I was coming out of Arthur Andersen. I wanted this to be, real top consulting firm. And to be quite honest, by the time I left to join the FRS in 2004, we were one of the top 3 firms, without a doubt. Companies wanted to do something. In those days, there was no McKinsey, there was no Booz, there was no this, there was no that, And, very pleased, but but could I continue in Ristral? Leave FRS aside. No, I had to understand my reality. I had burnt out twice, health-wise. It was affecting my health, much as I loved doing what I was doing. So as of the time the FRS opportunity came, it was like, I was already thinking of what next to do. And I love art. For those of you who know me, I love art. I love everything, creativity. So I was thinking of so many other things. And then the FRS opportunity came that, the president wanted to see me. So I now had to, first of all, ask myself, what's the end in mind? What's my end in mind as a person? One end in mind was definitely to remain healthy. Sorry, I'm going to digress a bit. When you're in public service, one end in mind you have to do is to remain on the job, because for you to remain on the job is when you can actually do something useful. If you take on the job and before you know it, you're out, you've lost that opportunity. So one end in mind was remain healthy. But another end in mind, which has been with me when I even started my career, was to contribute to the Nigerian dream, was to continue and impact Nigeria in such a way that Nigeria will be where it should be. So I needed to take a decision. First of all, I'd taken the decision to leave Ristral. So in therefore taking up FRS job, it was still in the line of the end in mind. And that's why when people say, if you read some interviews, how did I frame being in the FRS? I framed it as an opportunity to contribute to national development. That was my end in mind. And that's what I did throughout. But coming back to Ristral, my end in mind with Ristral was that it will run on its own. It will be independent and to partner with others in spite of my not being there. Now, when I left FRS to, I'd already assumed, which is why I'm running the CPP group right now, that Ristral will run on its own. But I had to see things differently, because throughout my time in the FRS, it was like a complete shutdown. Okay? Shut down, stay focused on the public service, and let Ristral work on its own. But it affected Ristral. And I now had to come back to Ristral. Because, the visioner, when you leave an organization, it's not the same. And you have hardworking people, you have working people. If you as a person have not infused that vision in such a way that everybody, talking about focusing your team, is not aligned with it, it doesn't work. And so I'm another living witness. I've left NRS now, FRS, back to Ristral, to saying to myself, my end in mind hasn't changed, of positioning the firm the way it is, but the way I see things has changed. But I needed to do things differently, because the doing things, the way you see things, defining your vision and your purpose will help shape the future you want. The way you see things influences the practices, the outcomes you want to act, and it influences the results that you get. So sometimes when you see me handling multiple things, and you're wondering, where's the energy from? It's because of this habit. Because my end is clear. And so the outcomes I want, my mission statement is clear, how I want to go about it. The practice I now need to do is no longer is not any, how will I put it? It's not an additional job. It's just something to be done. It's just something to be done. And that end in mind is impact driven. So if you look at the CPP group, it's no different from how it was when I was in 1996 as registrar, putting all these different components together. No different, because my end in mind has stayed focused. But because how I see things have changed from working in the public service, having run the organization, seeing the mistakes that I've made, reflecting on those mistakes, I'm changing the way I do things so I can get better results. This is such a powerful tool. So let me end with the time matrix. There's so many tools so that there will be questions and answers. Because the time matrix talks to be how you prioritize things. And the time matrix, this is your habit 3, putting first things first. And talks about it from a not important and important matrix and an urgent and a not urgent matrix. So for important and urgent, you call it Q1. These are things you must do. These are things of necessity. For quadrant 2 is important and not urgent. This is the habit of effectiveness. So things that are important, but on the face of it, they're not urgent. We hardly spend our time here. It's here that we plan ahead. It's here that we reflect. It's here that we think and ask ourselves, how do we learn on past mistakes? It's here that we create the time to build relationships. And I'm not too good at that, by the way. We're making phone calls, calling people. But because I'm consistently not very good at that, people know it's not personal. And I build relationships in other ways. So you have to look for what works for you. But you must build relationships. All right? You must build relationships. Now, there are 2 other quadrants that are what you call the distraction quadrant and the waste quadrant. They're not important, but they appear urgent. And sometimes it's imposed on you, and they're distractions. All right? And then you have the quadrant of not important and not urgent. Sometimes some of the posts that we put up, they're not important, they're not urgent. What you need to work on is reducing this and spending more time on this. Some of the quadrant 1, a lot of the quadrant 1 you can't do without. But the more you spend time on quadrant 2, the less you have things to do in quadrant 1. But as an effective player, you want to move from spending time here, and what is a distraction to you may be important to me. So remember that this quadrant is what is effective in how you run your business or your organization or your life. So let me stop here and see whether you have any questions that you want to put on the chat before we close this session. Thank you.
Great. Wow. Please go ahead and use the chat function to capture your questions. And if you need to speak, you can raise your hand and we will unmute you. Thank you so much, Fueko. This has been really, really powerful. I mean, one of the things that stayed with me, tools for reflection. You said we should come to you. So we are coming. Powerful. Principles need to be in alignment with your values. That really struck me. And I love the sound of that. But yes, let's have questions. If you have questions, please go ahead and type in chat. Or if you want to come off mute, please let us know. Just raise your hand and we will unmute you. Somewhere de Ojo. I mean, I think this means it's on point. Okay, I see Thomas Ame. Admin, could you please unmute Thomas Ame? Give us a second, Thomas, and we'll come to you. Okay. The time matrix, college jargon. Time matrix box is great. Is there a link to the image? I think you can find it online, but if you can't, just reach out to us and we'll share with you. Jargon, Mr. Jargon. Okay. So the person who was raising up their hand says they don't have any question. See that in chat.
Yes, and Carla, if you just Google it, you'll see the time. There are different versions of this time matrix. You'll see it online.
Okay. Daisy has a question. Please, how do you manage your time effectively? So much to do in little time. How do you manage distraction?
Well, I think let's use this time matrix that we're talking about. I think you first of all keep on prioritizing what is important and what is urgent. That's so very critical. And again, remember I said that one of the enablers for your being effective are your values. Okay, so if, for example, family is important to me, you can see. And so because of that, I'm not going to deliberately lock my nephew up in the room. And I would not consider him a distraction because he's here to spend his holiday with me, and I don't happen to have any support to be with him right now. So in that sense, he's now moved to important and urgent. So it's a necessity, and it's now how to manage. Now I could have managed it better by sitting him down yesterday, briefing him, but I actually didn't plan, talking about uncertainty, that he'll be awake at this time, because yesterday he woke up at 4. All right, so this happened differently. So this is a tool you just use. Is it important? And I'm listening to you, Daisy, depending on the angle in which you are in. So if, for example, you are working with your own leader and your leader is giving you like 100 tasks, you should sit down with your supervisor to say what is urgent and what is important. This is how much I estimate this time to be. So spend more time on this quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. The ones that you can do something about are distractions, and don't do it. Don't do it. Now, if in who you are, you want to be true to yourself and you want to be a social media person, and this is all you want to do, you want to ask yourself, is this a job you even want to do? So it's there's so many things going on at the same time. But if you are very clear on who you are, if you're very clear, this is what you want to do, if you're very clear that to do this, these are the things you need to do and get it done, and what is important and what is urgent, then you focus on those things on the quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. But spend a lot more time on quadrant 2 so that way you are planning. So, for example, I use the Outlook calendar. Now, let me tell you one thing, because I have so many things I'm doing, I'm asking myself, it was my daughter that taught me the other day that says, okay, so even though you put something on Outlook, it's not ringing out. So sometimes I even forget that I'm supposed to do certain things. And so I'm trying to see how I can link my alarm to my calendar. Or if not, I set up a separate alarm at the same time that will ring and say, okay, this is what I need to do at this particular point in time. But believe me, technology has helped tremendously. The Outlook calendar has helped. And others may have other tools. Please put them, on the chat that have helped you to manage distractions, not urgent, but you should also learn how to say no nicely. You should also learn how to, so for yourself it's easier, but when you're dealing with somebody else, you need to learn other skills, how to negotiate, how to persuade, how to communicate, timing of communication, to be able to ensure that you manage the distraction. But the ones that are self-imposed, believe me, you can just discipline yourself is something that can be done. I don't know whether that answers the question, Adeze. All
And
right.
Daisy, please put it in chat if that has answered your question. Thank you. Emmanuel Gobadia, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, so if I got it, by the way, thank you very much for this presentation, this webinar. It's really impactful. If I got it right, we would need as much as possible to be proactive so that we can dwell in our circle of influence and be able to control and manage things. And where we are not able to do that effectively, we fall out and then we get into the circle of concerns, which now becomes reactive. Now, my challenge is looking at it in organization context. There are certain things that you actually should be able to have influence over, and you are wanting to be proactive, but there are challenges around you and there are stumbling blocks, probably because of culture, because of orientation, and other influences, basically. So they hinder you for trying to be as proactive as you should be, and then you find yourself getting into the circle of concern. How do we manage such challenges, or do you think we should just, because I also know that there are areas of influence, so probably we should just maintain being proactive in our own little area of influence, or basically how do we manage it in the larger context where you have hindrances and challenges, probably from senior management or cultural orientations? Thank you.
Okay. So first of all, thanks for that question. And first of all, you've answered part of it, by saying that one first step you need to do is focus on your own circle of influence. And let me tell you what that does to your supervisors. When you're focusing on your circle of influence, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, please.
Okay. When you're focusing on your circle of influence with your supervisor, you know what that does? It endears you to the supervisor. It builds a better relationship. This guy is a hardworking guy. This guy delivers on results. This guy, do you know he's now better able to receive any issues you want to raise with him or her in understanding what is a concern that you have. And so that has grown your influence and your ability to influence him to address the concerns you have. I don't know whether I'm communicating.
I get you.
Yeah. So the beauty about this circle of influence and circle of concern is that it has a multiplier effect. It has an effect on yourself because by focusing on circle, okay, let me step back. When you're focusing on circle of concern, what does it do to you, your person? Tell me. How do you feel? Give me a response. When you're focusing on your circle of concern, what does it do to you as a person? Emmanuel, are you here? Okay, you feel dissatisfied. Now, look, I'm a big person. I'm very heavy on things affecting me as a person. When I feel dissatisfied, it reduces my energy to act. When I feel not heard, when I feel not achieving what I want to do, it reduces my energy to do something. Okay, so my energy draws from achievement. My energy draws from satisfaction. My energy draws from doing things and happy with those things. Do you know where I can do those things? In my circle of influence. So the more I work on the things that I can influence, guess what? I'm stronger, I'm more energized, I'm more incentivized to myself. Then I can now deal with other things. I have a very funny, do you know, as I'm talking to you, I'm not realizing why I do certain things. I have a very funny habit. When I enter my office and I find things are not where I wanted to organize, you know what I start doing? I start organizing my table. It gives me a sense of satisfaction, of an accomplishment. Then I'm ready to work. It's a funny ritual. So by the time I'm ready to work, all right, my sense of worth, not worth, worth is a bit deeper. My sense of happiness, joy is a lot more. Okay, so they are linked. Okay, now that's not to say that your concern should not be there, but put it at the background and find ways to address those concerns by seeing how you can influence yourself and influence others that will address the concern, but don't stay stuck in concern. I hope that helps.
Emmanuel, does that help?
Yes, it says yes.
Okay, great. Okay, we have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
What practical framework can leaders use to distinguish between what is genuinely urgent and strategically important in areas where several priorities compete for leaders? I don't know. When you say framework, what is genuinely urgent? But I think it's something we should think about. But I can tell you one of the drivers that will be in that framework. And I'm thinking on the top of I'm just thinking on my feet when I say that. You have to ask questions that always help you strategy. What is genuine and strategy important in areas which of these priorities, because there's going to be trade-offs. Which of these priorities is going to add to your ROI? Which of these priorities is going to, because you have to also tie it to your strategy and tie it to what you've set out, to what your end in mind is. So if your end in mind is to be profitable, or if your end in mind is you want to grow revenue, but you don't have to be profitable, you want to build a culture, but you don't have to be profitable, then the priorities that would lend themselves to those things is what would be priority for you. But if profitability is important because it's going to take out of a hole, or because your liquidity is in a bad shape, or whatever, those priorities that lead to that. Life is always a balancing game all the time. And you have to ask yourself, what are the trade-offs? The other day, I was in a board meeting and we're talking about, they didn't do this, and because of that, they've lost market share. Now they have to do it. And one of the questions was that, so is it that we didn't know that this is the implication? Because you could decide consciously, because of your you don't have enough resources to address a challenge, that, look, I know I'm going to lose out here, but this need is greater because of that. And if that's a conscious decision, then don't hit yourself bad. Just know that there are consequences, and at a particular point in time, you're going to have to deal with those consequences. Now, I'm going to give some time to Egon to talk about some of the things that we also do in FranklinCovey to help people, through these issues, because beyond, I've talked about 7 habits, but these are not trainings, because what I'm discussing are life journeys, are systems, are processes. So I'm going to give Egon some time, before we end, and while you're also feeling the feedback. And please don't forget on the Mentimeter to also look at this part on, was this session impactful or not? Please go back to that. I know there's also a feedback form in that regard. But please, let me just stop sharing and give Egon so that before we close, and we're supposed to close at 12:30, we give you time to think through what we do. And know that you can always reach out to us. You can always reach out to me. If you need any particular insight or whatever, please feel free to call me or send me an email. But the email, the FC email, Egon will put on the chat. But thank you. It's been a pleasant, time to be with you. It's not, there's so much that we have not even covered, but that wasn't the important thing. I just hope that 1 or 2 tools have been useful to you, and it will make you address some of the challenges that you did say you were faced, the distractions, the time pressure, anxiety, a lot of that, some people are anxious by nature. That's that nature, no matter the tools. So so in that case, you may need coaching, you may need counseling. Some tools may not help. I need to let you know that. But the more you practice, the less anxious you are. I get anxious on a lot of things, but I find that a prayer before I do something helps to calm me down. I also find that the more I do things and it becomes part of me, the less anxious I become, because then I've done it so many times, it's become a part of me. So those are just little things that you may need to do. And for support sessions, support systems, look for what works for you. So Monday, my daughter was in school the other day, and she said, and the Reverend Father, she was going to a Catholic school, and the Reverend Father said, okay, so what is the favorite food your mom cooks for you? My daughter looked at him and said, my mother doesn't cook. So my support system is I need a cook to help me cook. Okay, but some of us may not be able to do that. And so there's so many things that will work for you, may not work for me. And I wish you all the very best, and God bless. Over to you, Ivani.
Wow, thank you so much. Please use the emojis and just, let's get a sense of how you're feeling. Thank you so much. I know that this has been really powerful. I have learned a lot, and I hope you have too. Thank you, Ifweko, for that session. At FranklinCovey Nigeria, really, we are helping or enabling to drive breakthrough results on the 3 levels I discussed earlier: execution excellence, high trust culture, leader capability. This is just the scratch of the surface as to what is possible. Breakthrough results are possible, and yes, you need the people. So we give strategy the human edge. I mean, the solutions across the different ranges, and we can talk to you about those, but please feel free to reach out to us. One of the solutions or programs that can be helpful at this time is the upcoming Leadership Impact Lab. It's a 3-month program that enables your participants or the participants to immerse themselves in the 7 habits. And that's starting in August. I mean, from the very first week of August. So in case you want your team members to be a part of this, please feel free to reach out to us. Admin, please go ahead and put our email address and phone number on the chat. Also, you have a link in chat for you to join our newsletter. The very first issue came out, the Leadership Momentum. I would like you to sign up for our newsletter. You can scan this code or you can check in the chat for the link. Amazing. And yes, we would want you to give us feedback. We have identified and prepared a guide, complimentary guide that can add on to what we have discussed so far. You definitely get in your email, so look out for the email from us. And in case we don't have your email, please make sure you either put it in chat or send to us via WhatsApp on the phone number or via email. We'll be looking forward to reaching out to you to provide you with the complimentary guide. Please give us feedback. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. So please contact us via the phone number and email on the screen. Is also being put in chat for you to also reach out to us. We really want to partner with you to enable greatness in your people and your organization. So please feel free to reach out to us. There are quite a number of questions in the chat, ma'am, and I'm wondering what we can do about it. We have 3 minutes to talk to the end of this session. I don't know if maybe
I can answer a few. I'll start from the bottom. Does FranklinCovey organize paid training for? Yes, the answer is yes. I love what you said about now. It feels nice to know that anxiety. Honestly, it is so normal. It is so normal. So you're not alone. What a wonderful session. Thank you. Let me go to the questions. Where do I see questions? Let's see. If you don't mind me asking, could you kindly share one of the stories behind your healthy lifestyle? I don't know whether I'm healthy, but one thing I do know is that, well, I am healthy. Thank God for that. But one thing I do know is that for a long time, ever since I was young, food was always something I was very particular about, what I eat. I'm very conscious of oil. I never wanted to be fat. So my mother would say that, she's known me knowing a diet for ever since I was in primary school. So working on what I eat has been important. And then I do Tai Chi. I found a Tai Chi thing that for 7 minutes, so in the room, I'm not too consistent with that, but I find that, Tai Chi helps. Sometimes I walk, but I think I'm developing, that's genetic, early stage arthritis. So I find that walking for too long doesn't help me. So Tai Chi really helps. And honestly, I really advise that. And then I used to also play tennis, but that was a long time ago. Then I started having wrist problems, so I stopped. So look for what works for you. I wanted to swim, but I never quite finished the swimming lesson. So that's a to-do on the list. What practical framework can leaders use to distinguish between what is genuine? I think I've talked about that. I agree with Akanimo on being assertive, but believe me, being assertive is easier said than done. Sometimes in being assertive, people shout at you. Sometimes in being assertive, you have to choose your time, you have to choose your battle. And I'm talking as a woman also, not just as, and for men, it may be easier, but for women, people will confuse assertion as overconfidence. They confuse assertion with you want to take over, you're not the person in the house, or you're not, you want to take over. Gender, there's so many gender dynamic issues around, communication. I don't think we dwell a lot on that. And I think it's so important. I never really used to think that way, but increasingly over time, I now understand some of the struggles women have because I grew up with men, so I'm not seeing that, look, hey, wait a minute, there are some gender-related issues. So yes, being able to say no is what we should do, but not many people know how to say no. And I think in the All Access Pass, there are some of those tidbits of things you can take, but that's a 12-month subscription. You need to have to get that. What else is a question? Communication, absolutely important. Absolutely important. Communicating to your subordinates, communicating to yourself, communicating to your partners, communicating to your board, communicating to your shareholders. Perhaps the most understated issue that we need to really address in life is communication. Let me stop there. Thank you. It's 12:30. 31.
Fantastic. The whole place is buzzing with the emojis. And thank you, everyone. I mean, obviously, you had a good time. And please feel free to reach out via our email or phone number. We will be happy to have discovery sessions, complimentary discovery sessions with you. So would like you to reach out. Great. I know I've had a good time. So thank you, everyone, for joining. My name again, Egwon Owie, and thank you for joining our FranklinCovey webinar. Take care and have a lovely rest of the day.